The Death Specters legend grew not only through their victories, but through the horrors they endured. One of the most infamous engagements occurred in the Void Rift, where the warp's influence twisted reality into impossible forms. Here, a Xenos species, known only as Karathi, had established a labyrinthine station, feeding on the psychic energy of trapped humans and Astartes alike. Veilcor dispatched a full battalion. Pods dropped silently into the heart of the Karathi station. Inside, reality itself seemed unstable. Corridors stretched impossibly, rooms looped into themselves, and creatures with too many eyes and mouths lurked in the corners. The battle was a symphony of death. Specters emerged from shadows, striking with chainswords and power swords. Bolters barked once, punctuating the silence. Psychers aboard the station wailed as their minds were shredded by the psychic nodes that the Xenos had woven into the architecture. Korvax witnessed horrors that defied description. Fellow Specters consumed by entities that slipped between dimensions, cultists twisting into monstrous forms, mid-strike, and the Karathi commander, a grotesque fusion of mind and machine, laughing as it tore reality apart. Yet the Death Specters prevailed. They purged the station, severed the psychic link, and left nothing alive but silence. This was the nature of their existence. Victories without recognition, deeds performed in the void, and a constant reminder that even the Emperor's chosen could not escape the madness of the Ghoul stars. Within the fortress monastery of Occludus, located on a dead moon orbiting a ghost star, the Death Specters performed their rituals. The initiates were brought to the Hollow Vigil, where they were submerged into psychic voids, simulating the horrors of the Ghoul stars. Korvax had already survived his first mission, but the Hollow Vigil was a test of the soul. Within the psychic projection, he walked through a galaxy torn apart by warp storms, witnessing the deaths of entire planets. Ghostly figures, twisted and screaming, reached for him, whispering secrets no mortal should know. He emerged pale and silent, his mind sharpened, but burdened with the weight of what he had seen. Rituals were not limited to initiation. Specters would gather in the Chamber of Shadows to meditate, focusing on the Emperor's will and the imperatives of their duty. No words were spoken, for silence was the language of their chapter. Bolters and blades were worshipped as instruments of divine judgment. Even Captain Veilcor observed these rites with a measured detachment, guiding the chapter not with speech, but with presence. Ahu. The Death Specters were not limited to planetary engagements. They fought entire fleets in the cold void, using precision strikes to destroy enemy vessels before they could mount an effective response. One notable campaign, the Excision of the Sable Maw, demonstrated the full scope of their tactical genius. The Sable Maw was a rogue Xenos fleet, notorious for ambushing Imperial convoys and psychic manipulation. Specters deployed silently, using ghost ships and boarding pods. Entire enemy vessels were taken or destroyed before reinforcements could arrive. The fleet's commander, a Xenos lord known as Valeth the Maw, fell to a boarding team led by Veilcor himself, slain in the darkness as his ship was purged. Through such campaigns, the Death Specters maintained control over the Ghoul stars. Entire systems would vanish into chaos if not for their constant vigilance. Their reputation spread as both fearsome and terrifyingly effective. 2. The Death Specters exist for duty alone. They do not seek glory, companionship, or honor. Their bonds are forged only in shared purpose and mutual understanding of the darkness they face. Philosophically, they embody the Emperor's will not as conquerors, but as custodians of balance, ensuring that threats too great for the Imperium's fleets never reach its core worlds. Some surviving initiates would whisper that the Specters are cursed, that the Ghoul stars warp even the purest gene seed over time. Others believed they were blessed, chosen to bear the burden of vigilance that no other could endure. In truth, the line between blessing and curse had long since blurred. The Pale Warriors move as shadows, striking where needed and disappearing before recognition. They endure what no other space marine can, witness horrors no human mind should, and yet their loyalty remains unbroken. They are the Emperor's silence incarnate, the ultimate deterrent against the galaxy's darkest threats. Not all battles were isolated skirmishes. Occasionally, multiple warp disturbances converged, creating cataclysmic anomalies that threatened entire star systems. The Ghoul star convergence was one such event, a swirling mass of psychic storms and rogue fleets that drew every Death Specter's patrol in the region. The convergence began with a series of mysterious disappearances. Convoys vanished without trace, planets fell silent, and warp disturbances grew in intensity. Reports hinted at the involvement of a Xenos cabal, the Therac Enclave, who had harnessed the psychic energy of multiple derelict stations to open a permanent rift into the warp. Vale Corps convened a chapter council aboard the Erebus Wraith, plotting a strike unlike any before. Multiple strike forces would deploy simultaneously, synchronized to attack across different systems, isolating enemy vessels and severing the warp links. Initiates like Korvax watched, absorbing lessons in tactics, timing, and ruthless precision. As the Specters moved into position, the sheer scale of the convergence became apparent. Entire fleets of the Therac Enclave appeared like ghosts, moving in the shadows of the warp storms. Boarding pods dropped silently from multiple vectors, each pod containing a full team of Death Specters, ready to execute coordinated strikes. The battles were chaotic, yet orchestrated with terrifying efficiency. Bolt of fire cut through alien hulls, chainswords carved through flesh and machinery alike. Psychic nullifiers disrupted the Enclave's warp manipulations. Despite the scale of the engagement, the Specters moved like a single organism, a pale tide of death rolling through the rift. By the campaign's end, the Therac Enclave was shattered, their warp rift sealed, and the systems of the Ghoul stars stabilized, temporarily. Korvax, watching the aftermath, realized that no victory here was permanent. Every purge only delayed the inevitable. The Ghoul stars would always produce new horrors. Endless exposure to the Ghoul stars changed the Death Specters. The warp whispers, psychic echoes, and spectral visions seeped into their minds over centuries. They were trained to suppress emotion, but the psyche has limits. Some Specters developed peculiar habits, speaking to empty corridors, leaving offerings of blood in abandoned shrines, or wandering derelict worlds alone for days to commune with the echoes. Rituals of silence became not only tradition, but necessity, grounding them against the pull of madness. Initiates underwent extended void meditations, where they floated in stasis tanks while immersed in psychic simulations of ghastly events, the collapse of entire planets, fleets swallowed by the warp, alien creatures consuming humans whole. Surviving these meditations did not make them immune. It only taught them to move forward while carrying the weight of what they had witnessed. Some of the more experienced veterans, known only by their epithets, Spectre of the Hollow Moon, Wraith of the Silent Tide, would vanish for months on solo patrols. No one outside the chapter knew where they went or what they encountered, Yet each returned bearing scars, both physical and psychic, and a renewed commitment to the chapter's eternal vigil.